So when we take a look at incident management itself, the main processes that we talk about are prepare process, which includes not only all the things you have to have in place to ensure you can affect your incident management functions, perform your incident management and functions in a timely and consistent fashion, but also looks at what you need to do to sustain those functions and to ensure that they can continue and that they are institutionalized. And then also looks at ways to identify any gap areas, any new ideas or resources that could be implemented, all as part of an improvement process to improve your overall incident management function and all of your incident management processes and sub-processes. The main processes also include detect events, which is part of the monitoring and detection functions. So monitoring not only your network, but what's happening in your organization, within your constituency, within the general public or news, to determine if there are any new or ongoing threats or incidents or suspicious events. And then detecting anything anomalous in your own operations and your own infrastructure. Another main process is analyze events and incidents. So determining, really trying to answer the questions who, what, where, when, why, and how. And there are various techniques and methods that are used to perform those analysis activities. And then the other main process is respond. And this includes coordination of the response process, identifying and planning for what your response or mitigation is to a particular incident, and then recovering any data or systems or operations, and then also ties into what we talked about in the prepare process, that lessons learned that can allow for improvements. Supplemental processes that are covered in incident management that are situational awareness and information sharing. Situational awareness ties in greatly to monitoring and detection. So it's kind of, we're breaking out and taking a look at that function on its own. And then information sharing also is another part of how you might perform your response. So this just kind of gives you that overview of the different incident management processes, and then some supplemental processes that might end up standing alone, but that can be seen as part of detect and respond. When we're looking at the response part of incident management, we have to understand that incident response really starts way before an incident occurs. It's really tied into having all the right components, staff, training, processes, communication channels in place. And so when we look at the prepare side of incident response, we have to think about the fact is, do I have a plan in place? Has that plan been vetted? And do I have buy-in across the enterprise? Am I teaching people about threats and risks and how to protect themselves? Do I have forms and guidelines in place to tell people, how do you tell me about a problem you see or suspicious activity? Do I have incident reporting guidelines in place? Do I have point of coordination or point of contact, POC lists, so I know who to call? Do I have a communications plan in place? Do I know who are subject matter experts in particular software or hardware or analysis techniques that are important to my organization and to understanding any incident? And can I get in touch with them? And is there an established communications channel to ensure that they can work with me? Do I have the right tools in place for the right operating systems? Do I have the right defense tools in place? Do I have logging turned on so that I can understand what's going on and capture information? Do I have tools to analyze my logs? Do I have tools in place to help me do trending to see what type of incidents have been occurring over the past year or over a particular period. If I have to rebuild materials, if I have to rebuild my systems, do I actually have the right media to rebuild the systems and software? Do I have a process in place to vet my data if I think it may have been modified in an unauthorized fashion? Do I have response policies and procedures in place? Do I know that I'm allowed to do and I have authority to perform these particular response activities, but maybe I'm not allowed to do other activities? So we have to think about all the different preparation pieces. We have to think about the training of the staff. We have to think about the processes, the tools and resources, that they're on hand when needed so that that response process can be performed in a quick and effective manner. So we really say that you have to have all those things in place to be able to do a robust response. So when we break down the incident management processes and we take a look at just the prepare, sustain, improve process. So that's the whole name. It's called prepare, sustain, improve process. And when we look at the mission of it, it's to sometimes create an incident management capability if there's not one there, but also it's to improve and keep running or sustain any existing incident management capability. And you have to make sure, no matter if you're creating or sustaining, that you're meeting the needs and supporting the mission and goals of your parent organization or of the constituency you're serving. If you're standing up a process and it doesn't take those goals of the constituency and parent organization into effect, then you could end up creating an ineffective incident management capability. So when we take a look at the different parts of the prepare, sustain, improve process, and from now on, I'm just going to call it the prepare process. When we take a look at the prepare process itself, there are various sub-processes. The first is the coordination, planning, and design. So that's the piece that would occur if you're building your incident management capability. As far as understanding, as we said, the needs from the constituency and the parent organization, and then building the requirements. What does this capability need to be able to do? And that might tie into understanding what type of incidents the organization has been hit with, what is already in place for incident management or response, how it has to tie into any vulnerability management processes. So it's really kind of looking and identifying what that capability has to address. Maybe there's only specific types of incidents it's going to handle. So are there any constraints? And then also what the goal and the objectives of the capability are. Using that goals and objectives and the requirements, establishing the vision. So basically, that's the high-level view of here's what we think that the capability needs to be. It needs to have a security operations center. It needs to have a specific incident response piece. It needs to have threat intelligence. Whatever it is that determines those requirements. And then establishing that vision, it can even be developed into some type of a concept of operations or ConOps document. And of course, it should be developed into a incident management plan. At a high level plan that shows the players, like what roles exist, what responsibilities exist for each one of those roles, and how each of the responsibilities or tasks would be triggered and implemented. And then, of course, it also includes getting sponsorship, support, and funding to be able to actually stand up that capability. The next piece of the next sub-process is the coordinating the implementation. So in this case, this is still if you're building a new incident management capability, but it could also be if you're improving an existing capability. So developing any type of supporting policies and procedures, that incident management, communications plans that we've talked about, and then making sure that there's the definitions and taxonomy is established, understanding what the criteria or threshold is for determining that something has become an incident. It's no longer an event, but has moved into being an incident that must be handled. And then determining what type of resources are needed to actually perform the incident management functions and what parts of the organization are going to perform those pieces or deploying those resources if it's a brand new capability. And then also the evaluation of the capability. That's the next sub-process. And in that case, it includes conducting post-mortem review after an incident has occurred to determine and understand any gaps, any strengths, any weaknesses that occurred, and any lessons learned that require improvements to ongoing incident management processes, better training for staff, or improvements to defenses within the infrastructure. It also includes any change to the process or method for performing incident management, and then actually implementing those processes. When we look at who's involved in the prepare process, it can go across a wide variety of staff. It's certainly going to be the key stakeholders within the parent organization or constituency. It's going to be, if there's a project team, to help stand up a team, but it's also, or a function, it's also senior management and business line operations and business owners within the organization who have to give buy-in and support to work with any type of incident management capability. Many of the incident management functions can also be, as far as the needs and the requirements, may come from IT, system and network operations staff, and even people from representatives from the constituency. And there may be inputs from legal on what type of activities can and cannot be done as far as keeping compliance with any type of rules, regulations, mandates, keeping compliant with any organizational policies, and also ensuring that employee and constituent civil rights and liberties and privacy is protected. It can also involve getting the right coordinating, setting up the right interfaces between the incident management function and any of these third-party or relevant parties, whether it's human resources, public relations, law enforcement. So all of that is part of understanding that they may have particular needs that need to be met, but also in sustaining a system and improving a system, understanding that these other parties may have a relationship that needs established with the incident management function. When we look at performing incident management, some of the best practices that we have seen are really relate to specific decisions that maybe need to be made during an incident, but we want to think about those decisions ahead of time and have guidance for how those decisions should be handled so that you're not trying to figure it all out when you're in the middle of possibly a critical incident where part of the systems of your organization are down and not running, and personal data may have been released. So in the middle of trying to handle that incident, you don't want to be figuring out who you go to and what you should do. You want to have that already determined. So some of the decisions that might be something that you want to talk about and have some preparations in place for are when and if you are going to involve law enforcement. So if during an incident you don't want to have to try to figure out if law enforcement should be involved, you want to have criteria already established that say for these types of activities, malicious activities, for these types of incidents, this is when law enforcement would be involved, this is who would contact law enforcement, and this is how we would conduct ourselves if law enforcement had to be involved. The same for collecting forensics evidence. Not every incident requires that evidence be collected in a forensically sound manner. Very often it's going to be tied to, if you think that this is going to be a case that goes to court, then you would have to begin the whole investigation and the whole incident analysis process, and by keeping that information protected, by following chain of custody rules and regulations and best practices. And so you need to determine, will we collect or when will we collect forensics evidence? It may be certain types of activity, but it may be that there are cases where you wouldn't collect the evidence in a forensically sound manner. So those things should be discussed ahead of time, and here's where legal and law enforcement liaisons may be able to help. Upper management should be involved in those discussions, and of course the incident management function needs to understand and have these decisions documented into some type of procedure that can be followed. Also, determining some particular response steps. Are there systems that can be isolated or shut down? And on the opposite side, are there systems that cannot be isolated or shut down? Having that identified ahead of time will help you in a much quicker time understand the type of response and mitigation that you need to do. Some of the decisions up front can also be identifying what communications and notifications need done. Who are the points of contact internally and externally, and do you have all the contact information for business hours and non-business hours, and a backup for them in case they're on vacation or in case they're out of contact or not available, and also ensuring that that is kept up to date. So you want to know who you need to contact for various lines of business, for who's the owner of various systems, and what subject matter experts you can call in, and also who in upper management needs notified, and all of that can be part of your communications plan. Your point of contact list can be part of that communications plan as an appendix or a standalone matrix. One thing to keep in mind is that don't only have an electronic copy of it, because there could be problems with power or there could be problems with systems being down. So you want to have very easily accessible your communications plan, your points of contact list in both electronic and hard copy formats. And I can't stress enough, they need to be easily found by the incident management staff who are using them or by anyone else who is helping or coordinating the incident management response and mitigation processes. If you've determined that there are times where you have to have private protected communications or send data in a private protected fashion, then you also should determine what type of secure communication mechanisms you need to have implemented, whether it's using some type of encryption for email or for files, whether it's having some type of secure phone or chat that you use to communicate with, and you have to ensure that all the right people have access to the secure communication mechanisms, have guidelines and help materials that teaches them how to use the secure communication mechanisms, and ensure that people who are receiving the mechanisms know what to do and how to continue to protect the information when they receive it. Also, one of the prepare best practices is to identify any sensitive information. So if there information that has to have restricted access, if you're government or military, you may have data that has classification to it. So understanding how your data scheme is for labeling information, for identifying sensitive and restricted information or confidential information, and then ensuring that you have not only the right secure communication mechanisms in place, but that you also have secure storage facilities, whether it's secure areas for communications, secure phones, secure facilities, secure faxes, any type of, as we said, other secure communication mechanisms, but having those identified and in place ahead of time. Other things that can help with as part of the prepare process is what type of resources, what do you know about either your constituency or your parent organization, whoever it is that you are performing incident management for. So to how much information that you have and how up to date that information is can help you better understand the situation, can better understand any impacts that occur and any damage that has either occurred or is potential damage. So thinking about having critical asset inventories. Do we know what the critical servers, systems, data is for the operation and the mission of our organization? Do we know the criticality of those assets? And has a risk assessment been done on them? And do we know the potential consequences if something happens to those assets? Do we have any type of network diagrams, network topology, so we understand the current network environment, so we understand where systems and servers and services are placed, where defenses are in place, what particular tools or security tools are in place, what particular applications and appliances are in place. So understanding the network to help us identify areas that are targeted, areas that require specific logging and data collection, and understanding too what we might need to do to remediate or mitigate any type of anomalous, suspicious activity that has now been declared or determined to be an incident. For the detect process, it helps to have network baseline. So understanding what type of activity is routinely seen on your network. Network baselines are going to help in determining what is anomalous behavior. And we have to look at different times of the day and what's normal traffic. We have to look at different times of the year. We have to understand the operations. For example, for an e-commerce organization, it may be that your network traffic completely changes around holiday times. So understanding the operation of your organization and what the normal traffic patterns would be across a normal year. Also understanding and having what the correct software profiles should be for your key assets and devices, and understanding are there newer versions available that can put preventative measures in place or that can have specific functions that can be used in incident response. So understanding and having also, as I mentioned, any media to rebuild systems if needed, if they've been damaged or destroyed, especially if something has occurred where an intruder has been on a system for a long time and you're not sure what all has been changed. Can you rebuild that system? Do you have processes in place to review and vet any data that was on those systems? So those are some of the things to think about and some of the decisions and some of the resources to have in place to help you be able to perform incident management. So a key point for the preparation phase is to have that strategy for incident management. What's your plan? Who's involved? Who does what? What are the roles and responsibilities? How has it been implemented? And then ensuring everyone knows about it and that there are resources and guidelines that they can look at, whether that's a concept of operations document, a charter, an incident response or incident management plan that's easily accessible by the constituency or the employees. We want to ensure that you're not in the middle of an incident when you have to determine the answers to some of those decision questions. Do we actually collect evidence in a forensically sound manner? Who do I need to notify? You don't have time to figure those answers out or get the answers made or the decisions made by someone during the middle of the incident. You want to have those discussions ahead of time and have your guidelines and procedures in place for performing an effective incident management. The prepare phase is so important to ensure that your processes, staff, and resources are actually in place. Now, part of that prepare process that we didn't mention was that you have to test out the processes that are in place. So if you have a plan, you need to test the plan. If you have a communications plan, you need to test the plan. If you have specific secure communication mechanisms, you have to test that they work, and you have to ensure that all the people that need access to them have the access and have been trained on how to use any of the tools and the secure communication mechanisms before they actually have to use them. So think about what you can do, what you can have in place, and what might be unique to your own organization as you look at preparing for incident management. A big key to that, too, is training your staff in all aspects of not only the incident management process and the tools they use, but you need to train the incident management staff in the mission and key assets of the organization, because they need to understand what needs protected and what the rules are for what what systems could come down for a period of time, what systems must be up and operational. They need to understand the criticality of your key assets. Very often, incident management staff get a lot of training on tools, but they don't really understand how they meet and support the mission and the critical assets of the organization or constituency. So you also need to train them on that aspect as part of the preparation phase.